Hello, everybody. I am Melissa Forziat. I am a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something that I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is another way to say Carpe Diem. It's all about going after the things that you want in life. Something that I wanted to do this year was to rewatch the show Halt and Catch Fire, but this time actually talk about it with other people, which is a novelty for me. And we've up leveled that because now I'm getting a chance to talk with people who actually worked on this show. Now, before I introduce today's guest, a quick housekeeping item. If you are brand new to the show and you don't want spoilers, watch the episode recaps. Those are safe for you up until the episode that you're on at that point. If you are new to the show, though, and you watch these interviews, we could mention details from any episode of any season of the show. I don't know how much that'll come into play here, but it could. So just be aware up front. Now, I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, whose name you might have heard in some of the other interviews that have been published along the way. This is Kuykendall, who was a second assistant director in season 2. And then in seasons 3 and 4 was the key second assistant director. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
Oh, it's so good to talk with you. I'm finding for me that sometimes I have to, when I'm about to interview somebody, I have to say, hey, can you tell me what your job was? Can you tell me a little bit about what you did for a living? And I'm finding some of those interviews to be the most interesting because we all learn a lot more about the show and we learn to look through different lenses as we think about the show that we love. But before we get into the content of this show, I'm really interested to know how you got connected to begin with Halt and Catch Fire. When and how did you get into this role?
Okay. I have to probably say that my connection to the show came through Diane Calhoun, who was the second AD on season 2 and then became the first AD season 3 and season 4. She and I had worked previously together. I had done a Betty White movie of the week. Townsend Wells also worked with us on that, who was the 2nd2nd, the season 3 of Halt and Catch Fire. But we were a big family from that Hallmark movie of the week, and Betty White brought us together once, and then Diane and I did work together again in New Orleans. Which then brought us to Atlanta. So, the film industry has a way of bringing people together, and then once you find that camaraderie and that trust, you work together over and over and over again. And so that's how I found my way to the Jeff Freilich train, which ran in Atlanta, Georgia for 3 or 4 years, and it was wonderful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, let's start with you. I said that you had a couple different roles with the show. So let's start with your season 2 role of second assistant director. First of all, big picture, what does that job entail?
The 2nd is it's sort of a communications position. We call the assistant director department kind of production as a hub. But what it is the communication center for everybody. Assistant directors probably don't get the credit they deserve for really leading the ship and leading the crew as is. Directors come in, directors come out, but assistant directors are the mainstay for each and every television series, movie, but more so, especially with network series, especially when assistant directors do 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, and directors come in and they do 1 episode, maybe 2 of those seasons, 3 of those seasons. The assistant director really knows the tone of the show, the look of the show. We understand how long it's going to take to pull off some of those shots. I know you remarked on some of the camera work, which Halt and Catch Fire was a very camera-led show, and it had some beautiful work done through each and every season, through different directors as well. Each director brought their own nuance. But the assistant directors have I don't know, a legacy with the show, because everything from picking the cars that we put in the exterior shots to getting to know the coders. For me, the second or that second season, I got to know all of the coders really well because Donna and Carrie were creating that house, which became a very chaotic frat party, and those guys became great friends of all of us. Outside of the show, we hung out. We had our own get-togethers. We went bowling together. So it was a very what's the word, community theater feel for Halt and Catch Fire. So the second is an onset position, and I realized I started to ramble about things, but
That's
the
where the
reason
best stuff lives.
well, I'm trying to point out that the second is the person that is setting the extras, and by doing so, any scene that you go into a restaurant, the director, he's there with Lee, he's there with Scoot, he's there with Carrie, but the 40 to 50 people that fill the room, the second, with guidance from the first assistant director and the director, he sets all the extras, or she sets all the extras, and you set the crosses, you set the movement of the extras to lend to the camera movement. And on set, the second is also the person who's informing the producers where we are in the day. He's letting base camp know, hey, we've got 2 more shots here. Let's go ahead and start prepping this actor to hop in a van. Make sure you have what you need to get ready to send up or send over or move over to the stage or move over to the next location. So it's a communication point. And the second also has the production assistants, a key PA, a PA that's over the first team and over the background. And you're also communicating with those department heads, if you will. What's next? What's coming? What to have prepared? What to bring up? So um, you're watching the director, you're shadowing the DP, you're making sure the first AD knows when someone walks off and uses the restroom. Hey, we lost the camera operator. All right, well, that's going to time out when we actually do tell so-and-so come up. But if you can imagine always trying to anticipate what's coming, you're wrong half the time. I quote Bart Simpson all the time. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But it's better to be prepared. If I have the baby and the mom just waiting outside the hospital room door, and when we go to picture, we walk them right in, I'm going to get in trouble that the baby wasn't in the nursery. But if I waited until the baby was in the nursery, they would have expected it at the door. So it is one of those positions where you have to have a little bit of leather skin, but you are also trying to stay ahead of the wizards, and you're trying to outpredict someone. Um, at the end of the day, you're helping collect those time cards for the accounting departments, and you're doing a production report after wrap. Um, you're making sure that the trailers are shut down before the Teamsters can get out of there. You're making sure that the Teamsters are off the clock to make sure that the turnaround begins or that the parking lot is clear. So it's as if you're the hall monitor in the high school party. If the all the cool kids were the actors and all of the A+ kids were the producers and all the creative kids were the writers, the assistant directors are the hallway monitors. Does that make sense?
It does. And a lot of the people that you're talking about that are part of this process of the work that you're doing are stable figures on the show, but like you said, the directors are not. So,
Mhm.
what kind of a process do you have or did you create for this show to sort of quickly establish those working relationships, especially if it was a director's first time?
This was really and it felt like an actor-based show. Now I also look at Halt and Catch Fire and the timing of it. I know that you've remarked in that this show got 4 seasons, and wow, AMC went really out on a limb, but this was peak television. It was also a need to fill time slots. And whereas I also want to also say that Halt and Catch Fire was the greatest experience that I've had in my career. It was just such a wonderful family to be a part of, and I got to spend 3 seasons, 3 years with working with the same people. Um, on that note, it was peak television where I don't think that this show would have gotten those multiple seasons if it hadn't have been 2017, 2018. But because of that, we really were an actor-based show. The rehearsals that we did at call or at the beginning of the scene, those rehearsals where the actors blocked it out with the director, those drove the camera movements more so than prepping and saying, hey, we're going to do these camera movements. Now, someone like Phil would know, hey, I'm going to pull out of this, I'm going to drive into that. But when Lee comes on to set, he's like, well, that's not what Joe McMillan's going to do. Joe McMillan's going to do this. And at that point, you know, you restructure your day around, well, this is what our camera angles, what our plan was, but this is what our camera angles are. And that is what allowed this show to be so fantastic, because the performance drove each scene. Of course, if you're in a car, you can only have so many angles. But if the car is parked and Scoot's there having a moment with Carrie Bechet and the overs are French rather than a full-on looking through the front windshield, you know, that also drove the look of the show. I mean, it was a very sexy, sexy show from the very first episode. And it was a good time. It really was.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great to hear. You've talked a bit in a sort of non-example based way of like how you communicated with people on set, but let's use a specific scene as an example to get sort of a day in the life for you. So something that has come up in a number of interviews, particularly with the coders, is that long oneer that opened season 2 required it seems like a tremendous amount of choreography because we're really showcasing the new season inside that house and even a time jump. And so with something like that, your name has come up a few times as somebody who really helped to coordinate that, to keep to keep the day efficient, to keep it all running smoothly. For you, what would have gone into bringing a sequence like this to the screen?
There's a lot of, 10, 12 years goes by. There's not a lot of shots that you particularly remember, but that one may have been one of the first day or so that we had all of the coders. It may have been one of the first days of season 2 that we shot. We were on stage. It was supposed to be 7 scenes. And I remember all of a sudden we went into a flurry to get everybody ready. This 7 scenes, Donna was supposed to walk in. She was supposed to say hey to a couple guys. The next scene walked us into another room. Well, Juan wanted to go through all of it. And this was a very, this ended, I think it was about 7 3/8 pages that we walked through. One set up the shot. I'm not quite certain how many additional coders that came from the extras. I want to say we had 12. So you had your day playing coders who were all SAG members, but you also had some everyday additional background actors that we included that worked every day that we were in Mutiny. And so the shot became a Steadicam shot. It no longer was going to be 7 individual scenes with its own coverage. It became a shot that walked us through the entire house, and it was a very smart entrance to Mutiny because it really did show the chaotic nature of what had become. It also gave the organic feel of what a startup was like in someone's garage, and we rehearsed it. We ran everyone's lines. We found homes for everybody, which was really the cool thing. all of a sudden, Hoover, who played Bodie, he had a desk. And then Archie, we now knew that he sat here for the remainder of the season. Archie, this was his desk. And we were able to sort of walk through the entire room and be like, okay, you're going to be here. This is going to be your area. Now, what do you do in this area? And we had to break it down. Okay, well, what does this person do? And I remember Wonder Boy was sort of like he was pulling wires out of the attic and he was running them through the hallway. And we sort of had to figure out, and part of it is kind of this improv acting directing that we get to do with the extras, but you get to understand, okay, what would you be doing in this real life situation? And that was the other fun thing about this house is we had to get to know everybody really quickly. So I feel like we gave people name tags. We wrote each person a nickname that we were able to learn really quickly and off the cuff. And I feel like everybody got stuck with the name that first day. But Glenn strapped on the steady cam and we would walk it through with the extra, with the not excuse me, not the extra, but the stand-in. And we brought her in and we would follow her. And I believe it was Grace Hodges. And we would bring her in and follow her again. And well, that doesn't work out. So we would bring her in. All right, let's get two crosses right here. So we would bring in somebody to create that movement. And if we wanted it to be one of the guys with the lines, well, let's back him up. Or, well, where should he start? Okay, well, he needs to be 10 steps further back. And this went on for about 3 hours. As we were still getting those actors that we had rushed in because not everyone was ready at that presumptive time because like I said, this was originally going to be 7 scenes and 3 hours into it, Steadicam has been on Glenn's back now for 2 or 3 hours. He's taken a couple breaks, but we've gotten this beautiful master that takes Carrie off the front porch, it brings her in, there's over coverage and it just moves with her. And it was such a wonderful thing to do. And I want to say that was one of those days that we went home right after lunch, maybe an 8, 9 hour day, which is a beautiful thing in the film industry. You don't get to have those very often. You would usually pull something up and pack out the day, but I don't think we could. So it was nice. And you don't get to do a lot of oneers. I went to a film school. There was one point in my life I wanted to be a steady cam operator. And so the one shots in Atonement or other famous shots, you've always aspired to do something like that. And here we were, I want to say day 1 or day 2. It was definitely day 1 in Mutiny. We were getting to do a really special shot, and I brag about it all the time. Anytime someone asks me about Mutiny or brings up Mutiny, I'm like, hey, did you see the winner? But all credit to Glenn. He's a masterful camera operator. He's a masterful director of photography now, and he's a real gem to work with. So Halt and Catch Fire was lucky to have him.
Wow, the things you learn about this scene by talking with different people about it, so much cool information that I think only you could have because of your very specific lens of looking at it. If we go to seasons 3 and 4, your role changed. You're the key second. What were some of the responsibilities that you now had to take on for that role?
Well, you don't realize how much fun you have on set until you are taken off set. And it was my choice to move up to key second AD. I pleaded with Jeff and Steph and Doug and Diane to have faith in me to take on the position. And it's not an easy one. The key second AD does all 10 episodes or did every episode for Halt and Catch Fire. Which in hindsight was a lot of work. Just it being a period piece. Thankfully, I was fully invested in the show. Melissa was a wonderful creative producer to work with. Both Chris Cantwell and Chris Rogers were just dynamite, respectful, gentle. Um, they were such wonderful producers to work with, and you could feel that they valued each and every crew member. Um, the second AD position is absolutely completely different than any sort of plan or idea when you're like, oh, I'm gonna go into film school and get into the film industry. Oh, I had a teacher tell me one time that 90% of the film industry is paperwork. And I didn't quite understand what he was saying until I got into the role of second AD, and that is all your work, all your job. Um, Whether it starts in prep, and that prep is incoming scripts, incoming stories. From the script, where are we in the schedule? For some of our ADs, I would help with the script breakdown while they were filming the last episode. So here it is. When you're shooting episode 1, you have the full dynamic of prep, everything at your hands. Anything you want in prep, you have the time and the luxury of asking the production designer or the DP, what do you want here? What lights do you want here? But once you start shooting episode 1, everybody's time becomes extremely limited. And you're starting to ask costume designers and the DPs to think about things that are way out in advance for them, because right now they're in the trenches. They're focused on, what's on the call sheet for tomorrow. And you're having to drive and get the answers for, hey, what do you want for episode 103 that we shoot in 22 days? And you have to sort of keep picking at people. So you'll have to ask the same question 9, 10, 12 times just to get the food that needs to be answered. Does that, am I starting to get a little,
Yeah, no,
does
this
that
makes
make
sense.
sense yet?
Yeah, this is making
Okay.
sense.
So once you have the script and the stories, you get the schedule. And once you get the schedule, you can start locking things in. Now, everything is always shuffling, whether that be the locations are no longer available on Thursday, Friday. Well, we have to shoot night work now on Wednesday, Thursday. We have to come back to the stage on Friday, which isn't necessarily ideal if you're that crew member who's thinking, oh man, why are we coming at 5 o'clock on the stage on Friday? I'm going to have to work until 5 o'clock a.m. on the stage on Saturday morning. But that got driven by some location mishap that pushed the location work back. So there's always something revolving, always something moving. And because there's something always moving, someone's always having to reissue the paperwork, and that ends up being the second AD. Because, like I said, the first AD is already in the trenches. He's already working on the episode. We might already be in production. So, what's always changing? So as you get the schedule for the second AD, the most dynamic thing would be the actors. The easy actors are your 1 through 4. That's going to be Joe McMillan, Gordon, Cam, Donna. That's your 1 through 4. Number 5 would have been Boz. Those actors, they move from wherever their base would be, Texas, LA, New York, and they're stationed in Atlanta. So they become locals. Essentially, they're pretty much always on the clock per their schedule, per their contract. So they're easy to handle in comparison to the LA actor who has to get flown in, still has to get a costume, still has to have their wig done, still has to get their hair colored, still has to get their nails done, still has to go back for the costume. So what happens is there is this lovely nuance of phone tag. And it's gotten easier as the Apple phone has come around and you can put people in group text. There's always that one person that has the green text. But as it's, putting people in mm, points of contact or conversations has become easier. It really used to be one phone call, all right, I got in touch with someone. Hey, can you do this? All right, well, when could you do this? All right, they can only do it in this window. So you would have to call this person back. and there was a lot of phone tag. It has gotten much easier. But the basis of this key second AD is as the concierge of the film or the show in getting that actor from where they are to set for that first rehearsal. Until they get to that first to set into for that first rehearsal, it is my problem. Getting them to town or getting them to set or to stage. So um, yeah, you hear a lot about people's personal lives that you wouldn't expect. You find out that who has cats, who has dogs, and who has bad girlfriends.
So
Um,
currently you're filtering things you can and cannot say.
I am. I'm going through the process. I'm like, oh, I can't mention that. Definitely can't mention that. But you do. You find out who's going through a divorce, or you find out who is going through a breakup. And those things will affect you. You find out who's not sleeping well. I find out a lot about people's health that would shock you, but it is, as a concierge, like it is a literal, it is a concierge position. I don't know how better way to um, describe it because it's not, you're not the man in the top hat in the three ring circus. That's more the first AD. You're definitely in the back, but you're the spine of the book, and you're trying to hold it together. I've had a lot of people cry on my shoulder. I've had a lot of people crying in the trailer. I've had a lot of people yell at me. Some of the best, um, but there is just there is such a challenge, and it's also working in third area. Working in Atlanta is different than working in New York or Philadelphia or LA or Miami, which every city has its own group of challenges. Atlanta definitely has one of the best airports in the world. So traveling someone on the red eye from LA and they land at 6 a.m., get them to set by 7:30, do a fitting and have them on set by noon. We've done that before. That has been done. Um, and so a lot of the challenges, especially with Halt and Catch Fire, we're getting those period dressed people from LA or New York because that was the look of the show. It had the kudos to the costume designer, kudos to the production designer. Every thread counted. And you see that in the pillows on the couch, and you see that in what the actors wore. So
When I was reading a little bit that you had written to me beforehand about what you did so that we could have this conversation, I found myself wondering, if you're somebody who has to really keep people on task, on time, and yet everybody's saying glowing things about you in these interviews, like how can that be? How can those two things be true? But it sounds like you had a real listening ear and you were a real confidant to people, and maybe that's how they were able to sort of respect it when you like laid down the law about what needed to happen and when.
well, everybody's there for the same reason. You sort of have to play a good cop, bad cop. Um, but everybody's there to put on the production. We're still all artists.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Everyone's tired. It's funny, you take a break from making movies for a little while. Everybody's gone through the writer's strike and the actor's strike, and um, COVID has also kind of also made a lot of us take a step back. Um, and you realize like anytime that you had a disagreement with someone, you were dealing with a very tired individual who for lack of a better word, just wanted some sleep and some rest. And I've thought about that recently. An actress on another show was very upset one time, and she just looked at me. She's like, "Can I just get some sleep?" And I felt that. I was like, "Well, yeah, I understand." Um,
Yeah. I
there
can see you
is,
filtering.
yeah, well, I am filtering a little bit.
That's okay.
Uh, and you're also, I'm having to separate Halt and Catch Fire from a lot of other shows. Um, Halt was separate from a lot of the other work that I've done, not just in Atlanta, but like I said earlier, it was a very high point for me. And it's just that everyone got along so well. Um, it was the best of all of my relationships. Um, it was a wonderful drive to work every morning. You know, you go and do another show, and all of a sudden, that 20-minute drive to work that is an hour and 20 minutes, and you're like, wow, those stages were perfectly set. And they were. The stages that we used for Halt and Catch Fire were on the north side of Atlanta, and they were just ideal. And everything about the stages was nothing's perfect. I mean, I think during the winter months it was drafty, and during the summer months it was hot. But I think in terms of location for everyone in Atlanta, it was easy to get to, and there was no traffic in that direction. Um,
Actually wanted to ask about location. When you went on location to places, were there any favorite locations or any ones that were particularly complicated in
well,
terms of the work that you had to do?
the stages were ideal. Like I'm just rambling on about them. In season 3 and 4, we started using a corporate office, and there wasn't anything that was extremely difficult about that building. It was nice to go to. And again, you're asking about really difficult locations. That was the ideal thing about Halt. We didn't really take on horrible locations. And again, that's a lot of goes to Jeff. You know, Freilich was good about he understood making it easy on the crew. The path of least resistance is something that I've been taught, living by recently. And it really was, the stages were easy to get to. The corporate building was easy to get to. We did shoot a little bit in Kirkwood, but again, it was before Kirkwood was overshot in Atlanta, and it was before the neighborhood was taking advantage of lowly film people. But everything was, again, it might be the timing that we were shooting Halt. Atlanta hadn't hit that bubble, or its infrastructure wasn't overwhelmed while we were filming this series. So the logistics it was logistically a very simple show in compared to some of the other shows we shot with Jeff. I don't want to name the other shows from the parent company. Um, but those logistics weren't as simple. They weren't as they were actually very difficult locations, and that would be whether it was a reoccurring restaurant that we reused, and it's hard to reuse restaurants because you're kind of needing there to be a structure and bones in place. Um, with Halt, we didn't have any reoccurring sets that were affected by the public. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
We did use uh, the American Mall in Atlanta, which is the massive, huge facility that we used for the Texas instrument. Come on, the conference. I think it's,
Comdex.
yes, there we go.
Yep.
That's what. And so that was a large facility in downtown
Oh.
Atlanta, a massive, huge facility, building that was probably the most difficult to get in and out. I believe the art department would tell you that that was the most difficult. But again, logistically, Halt and Catch Fire was a dream. It really was. It was something about shooting here before the resources got um, soaked up. Does that make sense?
It does. You know, I'm so, this is might be me being a nerd about TV and film, but I listen to a lot of interviews with, a lot of times when you're seeing interviews about TV and film, it's with actors, directors. Those tend to be the most often. But a lot of times I've heard about people talk about how confusing or complicated call sheets are. And I thought, what does a call sheet look like? And then a gift from you in my inbox, a call sheet. So I'd love to put one on screen for folks who haven't seen one of these before to kind of have you walk us through.
Absolutely.
Um,
They can be confusing. Um,
so yeah, I mean, basically, this is what you sent me. I think this is the first page of a call sheet. But
okay.
tell me what we're looking at here. What information are you taking away from this?
Well, first things first, right, bright and early, 7:30 a.m. And this was on a Tuesday, and this would have been day one of an episode. So we're starting fresh. Um, what that would tell me is possibly, unfortunately, how tired is the crew going to be coming in off the Monday? What did they shoot the night before? And this predates COVID, so we still shot 14-hour days, uh, which was a little tiring. If we're having a 7:30 call today, we probably shot until 8:30 the night before. So that gives you an idea. All right, so if you want to scroll down just a bit, the most important thing at the top right now, you'll see private director rehearsal with the cast at 7:15. That means that all the production assistants, right at 7:15, they start screaming, director's rehearsal. And everybody's probably still at catering. All the grips and electrics, they want to get to their dollies. They want to open up their trucks. The camera assistants all want to get to their carts. Um, Big question, did we shoot on the stage the night before or are we unloading the trucks? Because if that happens, you're going to have to quiet everybody down for this rehearsal. So then the crew gets real grumbly and all the PAs get real pensive. And then we walk the cast in and we're starting with number 3 and number 5. So that would have been Mackenzie and Toby. They're going to do a quiet rehearsal. If you'll go up just a bit, I can see who the director was. This is for episode 308. Oh, and so this would have been Karen. Or no, that says 307. So
307. Mhm.
great. We have found one of my mistakes on the call sheet already.
Oh
There's
no.
always a mistake on the call sheets. I probably would have fixed this the following day. But can we scroll down to the very bottom?
Sure. Oops. Let's see. There we go.
All right. So Veronica, known as Ronnie, she would have been our first AD, and she would have brought everyone in, and they would have rehearsed for 15 minutes. First thing that they would have done through the rehearsal is they would have gone through the lines, then they would have blocked it out. Once they got comfortable with it, they would have brought in the crew and they would have marked it. Eventually, if you can go back up to the actors section. So back where it says Mackenzie, Cameron, ready time, 8:15. So 8:15 is what time we're expecting to have the camera and the cast all ready at once. And that's what we would be gunning for back at base camp. You know that 7:30 is really when you're going to get that first rehearsal with the crew in there. Which means we would probably, there's no way we would have made 8:15 time. So and just see, this has been a while. So Mackenzie took an hour and 15 minutes to get ready back in the day. She was very easy for a female actress. But Mackenzie had the messy hair. She would really come in. It would be a little dready, and she wore little to no makeup, so she was a doll. Carrie, on the other hand, required 2 hours in hair and makeup. Yep, that's still right. And so Carrie would take 45 minutes in hair, 45 minutes in makeup, then about 30 minutes to get dressed. And that's just to get them ready in base camp before sending them up. And so you can see there was always a difference between Carrie's ready time and Mackenzie's. And you know, if you ended with Carrie and Mackenzie in a scene, Carrie would get less sleep than Mackenzie because Carrie would have to come in a little bit earlier than Mackenzie would to get ready. And so a lot of the times it would hinge on Carrie. What else can we learn from this call sheet? Um, Mark O'Brien had a fitting later that afternoon, and he was a fan favorite, or he was definitely a base camp favorite. We loved all those guys, but also you can also see that August and Cooper were traveling that day. So they were traveling from Atlanta to LAX. So we must have shot with them the night before, and they were going home for the rest of the week, or they were going to come home, come back to the episode a little bit later, but they were getting some time off. And then Annabeth Gish, who played Diane, she would have come in a little bit later. So that lets you see that we would have started the base camp opening around 6:30. Um, that allowed Cameron to get in there and everybody be ready at 8:15.
This is amazing. This I don't know. This should have been on my bucket list, but it wasn't. So we all just got to not
Oh,
only
if you
look at a
stop,
call sheet, but we got to get walked through it.
well, if you'll look down here, you'll see that, you know, this must have been, go back up to the middle
Oh.
section, please.
Mhm.
You'll see that we had special effects in every scene in the special instructions section. In terms of, we have the 20 San Francisco coders. And so those San Francisco coders, remember that. Oh, it's bringing back memories. So, you know, the San Francisco coders, they were all hand selected when we first opened up that San Francisco office of Mutiny. I think we took 2 or 3 from the original group of coders that made the transition with us, but we did want to show that Mutiny had grown throughout the seasons, and we were able to do that with the background actors. And that day, you'll see that we had some of our favorite stand-ins working with us. Mary Griffin, was Cameron, was a longtime favorite, and then Michael Leo worked with us for years. So,
Wow.
and it near the bottom, you'll see what we're shooting the next 2 days. They gave you Wednesday, we were going to be back on the Rogers stage. And then Thursday, we're working again in Mutiny. So
Oh, this is
it
so
also,
cool.
it
Thank you
also
for
lets you see how we schedule things. I don't mean to talk over you. Of course, it's nice to show someone, but it also lets you see um, how we schedule the actors. You know, you try and keep the days with a lot of actors or all of the same day players, keep them all together. You know, you have 5.5 pages the next day, all all in Mutiny, but with a lot of actors going there. And then you scale back as you get um, either as the episode ends, you try and end with 3 and 4, 3 and 3. You're scaling it back so that you don't have people on hold or you know getting paid on their days off. So that also lets you see how we would schedule those things.
wow. I mean, it just goes to show you, I'll stop the share, but it just goes to show you how very, you know, one thing being off affects everything else. So you have to really pay attention to what's realistic when you're creating these, and then people have to stay on time all
Well,
day for that to work.
that or the weather, you know, it's the show must go on, as they say,
Mhm.
and it's a machine, and it was a wonderful machine to work for quite a few years. It was nice.
You know, just I guess one sort of last question, you know, are there any other favorite moments for you that specifically come to mind when you think of working on this show that you can share? I know that there was a lot of stuff that was private and sensitive in your day to day, but
Well, you know, I was in base camp for half of the show, and you really do get to know people really well. I had worked with Lee on a previous movie. And so we had some small connection there. Scoot, I'd worked with on a previous movie, and he and I had children that were the same age. We would get together on the weekend, um, and it was nice. You know, Scoot had a beautiful house in Serenbe. Um, I got in trouble one time, and I may or may not have had to do, the producers don't know about this, but I may or may not have had to do some public service. And so I got all the coders to be in a movie for me. And I was able to do 40 hours of community service because, so big shout out to all those coders that helped me that afternoon. And it was a, you know, it was a fun experience, but it was one of my first experiences in Atlanta where I was an assistant director. We had a great staff of production assistants. Haley was in base camp. Jamie was on set. Keegan was with the extras. Jill was wonderful in every position that she did. Sarah was wonderful in every position that she did. We had a great connection. I had wonderful, wonderful relationship with Diane, Doug, Warren Gray as well. And it was a great family. Um, Steph and Jeff were wonderful leaders. The production office was always there to cover us. Um, any sort of disagreements you had with the accounting or the accountant or the clerk, you could go and wink and smile, and they would say, you know, it's not a big problem. Just put that paperwork in for me, sugar. And it was a great trip. Um, I'm sad that the show couldn't have gone on for 9 seasons. I'm still waiting to have that ER or that 20 seasons of NCIS that gets to allow you to have that. Because I think for anybody that got into the film industry, there was at one point that community theater feel that they had, you know, they shared with another group of people. Um, Big shout out to the Lawrence County Community Theater and for Miss Bonnie for getting me interested when I was 7 years old, because I've had a wonderful film career and this has been really amazing. And Halt and Catch Fire was a real check on the box for me. It was a lifelong dream. So thank you for
Wow.
asking me about it today.
This is so wonderful to hear. Is there, and I know it's been a strange time in your industry. Is there anything that you've, I don't know, worked on since Halt and Catch Fire or recently-ish that you wanted to plug here that you want to make sure that we've all seen?
Uh, well, the irony of it is, I've been commissioned to write 4 scripts over the past year. And only one was actually my idea. Um, so I'll plug them all. But I have had an opportunity to be more creative recently, which is what I really do want. And one of the scripts is based on the House Select Committee of Assassinations, 1976 to 1978. I've spent 10 years interviewing G. Robert Blakey, who was the head investigator, who looked into the assassinations of Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. The 2 books were The Plot to Kill the President and The Fatal Hour by the House Select Committee. And it is about the CIA and the mafioso Carlos Marcello from New Orleans and their plot to kill John F. Kennedy. Robert Kennedy has read bits of it, and he knows who I've listed as the killers are, and he put his finger on his nose. And so it has been a really cool thing to write, and it's gotten graded pretty high recently. And I've also gotten an opportunity to write a couple science fiction pieces. One most recently about parallel universes and time shifts and halogen colliders and what happens if they create a black hole on this planet. All possibilities that are happening all over the world as we play with particle accelerators. And then I got an opportunity to write a creature feature, which was a throwback to the 1940s, large 40-foot women or large 40-foot ant type stories. It wasn't actually about large 40-foot women, but it's just the creature feature type style of the 70s and 80s. So it's been fun to start doing things that are outside that realm of norm. I've been doing a little bit with artificial intelligence. I have some friends who are rappers in New Orleans, and I'm always making music videos for them. And it's interesting what you can do now with Runway or Firefox. Adobe Premiere is becoming just outstanding in what you're able to do, taking someone and then taking the background like you have and putting you anywhere in the world. You could be sitting in the office of Mutiny, or I could be wearing Joe McMillan's face. It's so interesting to see where things are going and what you're allowed to do with in the artificial intelligence world. I don't think we'll ever get away from the beauty that is production. You can't replace the tears in someone's eyes, or you can't replace the moment or the slow breath or something that actually creates an emotional response. And that was what was beautiful about Halt and Catch Fire. They allowed the actors to do it, to actually have those moments. And we took the time to let those scenes breathe. And that's what was special about that show. That's what I haven't had on any film recently. You know, you rush through Bad Boys 3. You're running through the streets of whatever music video you're trying to shoot and get as many shots as you can, instead of spending 4 hours with a scene and letting Lee Pace cry his heart out. You know, it's beautiful. So
Oh my gosh, this was so fascinating. I hope that everybody listening learned as much as I just did. Thank you for taking all this time to chat with us and to share your unique experiences on this show. And if you can, I'd ask you just to hang out an extra couple seconds after we say goodbye to everybody. And to those who are listening, thank you for watching this. And please go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye, everyone.
Joe McMillan for president.